Hello, everyone. Greetings for the day and welcome. This is Divya here. And today we are learning about Dr. Maria Montessori's life history. This is your chapter one in your theory. Let's take a look at Dr. Maria Montessori's life history. In the section 1.1, we would learn about Maria's birth and her childhood. Maria's early childhood. Maria Montessori, she was born in the town of Chiravali in Italy on 31st August 1870. Maria's father was Mr. Alessandro Montessori. Her father was a soldier and he was a civil servant. Maria's mother is Renal Stoffani. She was a very educated lady. What was Maria like? Maria was self confident. She was optimistic. She was deeply interested in any kind of change. She was very brilliant and she had the ability to learn and grasp things very easily. How did she do in her exams? She always did well in her exams. What about sports? She also liked sports and did sports very well. And most often, she was the head of the team. This was about Dr. Maria Montessori's early childhood. Now, in case if I have to be moving towards my second page, so I will have to be working on that. Let's move to the other section. So, section 1.2. In section 1.2, we would be working on Maria's early education. Now, here in this, we would learn about her early education. She graduates from a technical school in the year 1886. She got really good marks. After that, she studied modern languages. She was also interested in natural sciences. From the institute called Regio Institute Tecnio Leonardo da Vinci. From when to when? She did her modern languages and natural sciences from the year 1886 to 1890. When she was pursuing this course, she had a favorite subject. Math was her favorite subject, but still she wanted to take up medical profession. Maria's father was against her interest to study medicine. And at that time in Italy, it was unthinkable for the women to do medical in Italy. Maria, even though she wanted to medicine, she did not get any support. Due to her strong will and her mother's support, Maria could not join. Even though she had interest, she could not get into medicine. So this is our Maria's early education that we have learned in our section 1.2. Now coming back to our next sections, like, you see how did Maria became the first women doctor of Italy. Now the University of Rome did not allow her. She wanted to do medicine, but the University of Rome, did it allow her? No, it did not allow Dr. Montessori to do medical course. Why they could not allow her? Because she was a woman. So Maria decides, she can't be quiet, right? So she decides to study something else. What does she learn? She learns physics, she learns math, and she also takes up a subject in natural sciences. Once she completes this course, in 1892 is what Maria receives a diploma of licenza. Note down this. In 1892, Maria receives diploma of licenza, which made her eligible to study medicine. But do you think she'll be able to write medicine? No. Her admission, did it get an acceptance? No. Her admission did not get an acceptance. Her admission was denied. Why? Same reason. She was a woman, and in Italy, women were not allowed to study medicine. So, can she keep quiet? She was not quiet. She finally went to Pope 13 and she asked for his help. She asked him, can I do this course? I would need definitely your help. So Pope 13 recommends her to do medicine. In 1896, Maria, with Pope 13's help, she presents a thesis to a board. And how many members were there in that board? There were 10 members in that board, and all these men were so greatly impressed with her work. and they granted her a degree of doctorate of medicine. And that is how Dr. Montessori became the first women doctor, and she graduated from the medical school of Italy. You know how beautiful this particular concept is, and she becomes the first women doctor of Italy. So, this is about Dr. Montessori becoming the first doctor, and it's really good for all of us to actually work on the learnings. Let's move to the next section. In the next section, we would see Maria's initiation into the field of education. We have learned that she became the doctor, but now how into field of education, right? So we need to understand this. Now she obtained her degree in 1896. She had to start to work. So she goes for work. So she joins as a surgical assistant in Santo Spirito. While she was working here as a surgical institute, Maria could not be quiet. She continued her research work in the same University of Rome where she did the medicine. So she was also a member of this university's psychiatric clinic also. Now you see, she's a doctor, she's continuing her research, and at the same time, she became the member of the university's psychiatric clinic. Here is where she became to educate the mentally challenged children. Now, this led her. Now, Gian Ettard, like, Gian Marc Gaspard Ettard and Edward Seguin, these were the two people who were working with mentally challenged children in this university. So they were Frenchmen, okay? So they worked with children who were mentally handicapped and who cannot be educated in the same way. So they were developing a set of activities, especially for these children, on basis of sensorial education. So they worked on sense of sight, they worked on sense of touch, and so Maria was observing them. Maria was observing all these mentally challenged children, and she was like looking how Ajian Attard and Edward Seguin were working with them. So she greatly gets inspired by them, and she also reads all their books. And even Friedrich Froebel, the person who actually worked on the kindergarten method. So Maria studied their work, and Friedrich Froebel's work was a German, and she formed schools for children up who formed schools to children up to 7 years. With all these knowledge, she got a lot of information of how can we educate children with senses and the intellect. So she started conducting a particular program. She was writing a lot of things. She got deeply influenced by Friedrich Froebel, Jean Ettard, and Edward Seguin, and she made up a teacher program manual. Okay. So this is in our third section, wherein we know that how she got that what I could say, initiation to the field of education. Now we go a little bit more deeper in understanding about these three people. Okay, so if you have not seen them, these are the men that who deeply influenced Dr. Montessori. The first person is Gianetta, the second person is our Edward Seguin, and the third person is Friedrich Froebel, who worked for compulsory education of children of 7 years, and he is the person who invented kindergarten methodology. Now, how Maria got influenced is because of these three people. Now, what happens later is like, since she was so closely associated with all these mentally challenged children, in 1988 is where at the Educational Congress in Turin, Maria gave a lecture. And she gave a lecture about how to train the mentally challenged children. So at that time, there was also an Italian minister who was observing, and he was attending this lecture, and he was very much impressed by the way she was presenting her arguments and the way she was introducing conceptuals to how to teach these mentally challenged children, how to use those sensorial tips to work on it. And he gets so impressed by her work, he calls her and appoints her in the same year, and he asks her to take up the job as the director of the Scholar Entrepreneurship. Now, here, Scholar Entrepreneurship, this was an institution which was devoted to the care and education of mentally challenged children. This was a big hit for Dr. Montessori, so she immediately accepts it. She takes that appointment. She's like, okay, let me, this is a wonderful opportunity so that, whatever I'm learning from these three men, I can also test my theories over here. I can also develop a teaching program to these children so that I can make them to read and write. She wanted to work with these children. It's not about, letting them go. She wanted to try out multiple exercises. She wanted to prepare the children so very well. So she takes up this job and she was appointed. So she accepts that appointment, which was given by whom? It was given by the Italian minister. So, our Italian minister made her the director of Scholar Entrepreneurship. Now, this Scholar Entrepreneurship is what? It's a institution which is developed for what or devoted for what? To care the education of mentally challenged children. So Maria accepts it. Okay. From here, we would see the other areas that how I could work on. Okay. So let's go to the next section. After this, what Maria does, let's see. So in the next section, we talk about the Montessorian miracle, and we know that she accepted that offer, and now she's totally into teaching. She's being very much into teaching. She's very much with students, right? So what happened was, like, as a result of this novel approach of teaching, several of her 8 years mentally challenged children, so she makes all these mentally challenged children who are of 8 years old to appear for a state level exam. She makes them to apply from the institute itself. Now, this exam was for what? Children had to read and children have to write. So, when she initiated this examination for reading and writing, all these children who appeared for the exam, no, everybody passed. And not only passing, they all passed with above average scores. This is described in the history of Dr. Montessori as the first Montessorian miracle. See how mentally challenged children were able to write the same exam which was written by the normal children. And she made them appear for the state examination. She made them read, she made them write. Not only read and write, they passed with good scores. And that is considered to be as the Montessorian miracle. Now everybody was watching this particular thing, and this was a huge success for her. And they said her teaching method with this mentally challenged children at Scholar Antrefrancia caused Maria to question. They were like, if you are able to work with this method for challenged children, why can't we use your method in normal conventional schools, in the normal conventional education systems, where children who are weak in studies, who are failing to learn, who do not have focus and concentration, can also get benefited? So that is when Maria decided, yes, let me also think about this. I can also get into starting normal conventional education by using this methodology. And thus, Montessori starts her first Montessori school in Italy, and she names that as Casa di Bambini. Please note down, it's called Casa di Bambini. This is the first Montessori school. Casa means home. Di Bambini for children. Casa, it's called children's home. Casa means children's home. Even now, many of the Montessori schools, they call it as Casa. Okay, it's the home for children. The second home, I could say, it's home for children. This is the first ever Montessori school, which was started in Italy. All right. Okay. So this is so good for us to understand. And from there, we understand what was there. Okay. So to understand about this human workings of the human mind, Dr. Montessori again comes back to the University of Rome. Okay. So she comes back here. She returns back to the University of Rome. She still continues and pursues her psychology. She learns philosophy. In 1904, she was appointed as the professor of anthropology at the university. Okay, so considering she already was working with Scholar Entre Francia, you remember she was the director there. She had that experience, and now she's a professor of anthropology. After that, if you notice, she's good in natural science, she's good in math, she's good in, now she's pursuing psychology, she's pursuing philosophy. Maria had so much onto her learnings. So, because of all such experiences, Maria was asked to open a school for children. Okay. And for which kind of children, or where she was asked to set up? In a slum developmental project. So, this was in a district of San Lorenzo in Rome. So she started establishing the school on 6th January 1907. This is the history. Okay. So this was history, 6th January 1907. Maria starts her first school and she names it as Casa di Bambini, which means children's home. How many children were there in this casa? There were 60 children. And how were their parents? They were mostly slum workers. They were mostly workers. Okay. So she took up. Now take a look at this. Take a look at this picture. If you take a look at this picture, you should be able to see how her casa was. See, children were all outdoors. They were enjoying. They were enjoying the nature, right? So it was very her own way of setting up a classroom this way. Now, if you notice about the classroom, her system of education was through observation. Okay, every observation that she was making, she was looking at children, it was all scientific. Okay, what did she observe is, when she was looking at these children, she felt like, oh look, children are able to work so much, they're able to gain so much of knowledge with less effort, and they're learning from their surroundings, and they had so much of interest while they were manipulating these materials. So every piece of equipment, every piece of exercise, or every exercise, every method Dr. Montessori developed was based on what she observed from these children. Okay, and they were doing everything naturally. Please note down, children were not forced to learn anything, they were learning, they were doing naturally by themselves. None of the adults were assisting them, so they were not assisted by any adults. This was the beauty of Dr. Maria Montessori's casa, and still now many of them are very proud about how this methodology has been come up into existence. So this is about Dr. Maria Montessori's, what I could say is about the CASA and all of that. So what you need to remember here is, like, these lines are very important, guys. So these three lines, you can mark a star here, because every piece of equipment, every exercise, every method, what Montessori is developing is what she's observed children doing naturally by themselves, unassisted by adults. This is very, very important. Such a powerful statement. Our entire Montessori method is based upon how children are doing themselves without any adults' intervention. Okay, so this is what we learn in our lessons. Now, moving to our next section, what do they do here in the CASA? So, children, they learn. We know about that, right? So, what is my baseline here is like, in this CASA, teacher is there, but children are teaching themselves. So, this is very simple. And this is what is Maria's inspiration also. She wanted to uh, introduce in this way itself. So what did she do here was, like, she started grouping children according to their multi-age. So we had in this CASA children of 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years. When we put all of them together, there were few of the older children who were doing something, and the younger ones were looking at how the older ones are doing, and they were learning. So she used this methodology because this is a basic psychological way of thinking. When somebody is doing something, we get interested, right? So she used this method of teaching and training all of that. So she introduced this to children also. And she said, yes, now children can learn everything. They don't need anybody to assess. And that's the reason Montessori method is also called as a self-learning process for a child. And since she could not do all by her alone, there were more and more number of students coming up, taking up this methodology. And they said, looking at how she was pursuing this, methodology based on the observations and the research, what she was going through or what she was doing in Scholar Entre Francia, and how well she was doing in Cassidy Bambini, her new Montessori school, all put together, she got a great experience in putting up a new system of teaching. She had the experience, research experience, where she was working with Gianetta, Edward Seguin, and got influenced with Friedrich Froebel and Scholar on Differentia. Because of that knowledge, she could understand how to educate children sensorially, right? So she was educating children's senses. And coming down to her CASA, here is where she grouped all of them into multiple ages and she put everybody together. That itself became a new system of teaching. And because of that, in 1909, she demonstrated her first Montessori teacher training course to all the teachers around the world. She published a book. Okay, note down, this is a very famous book. It's available on Amazon also. You can purchase this book. It's called Scientific Pedagogy as Applied to Child's Education. Okay, so this is the book where she writes down how to introduce methods for our children. And how do we do that? We saw here everything was from where? Every equipment, every exercise, every method, what she developed was based on what? Whatever she observed children doing naturally. So the same thing was also published in this book. And also, she picked up ideas from the French educators Jean Etard and Edward Seguin. And she proposed the stimulating exercises through constructive activities so that it strengthens and helps the child to boost their self esteem. Okay, so this is the first Montessori teacher training course. You have to remember, when did it happen? In 1909. She demonstrated the first Montessori teacher training. After doing the teacher training, what does she do? She will start to publish her book. What is the name of the book? Scientific Pedagogy as Applied to Child's Education. This is the book. Now, this book will have methods from where? All her experiences from Scuola Andre Francia, her experience at the Casa di Bambini school. Not only this, in the book, she will also give ideas what she learned from Gianetta and what she learned from Edward Seguin. Why? So that the child can learn and have a great self-esteem. Clear? Yes. So let's move to the next topic. In the next section, we should be able to learn about, we saw that, the training courses are all done, right? So from there, Montessori education became so famous now, and people started noticing, and United States of America also calls her. So this is where her method started getting known worldwide. So in 1913, Dr. Montessori visits USA. Who invited her? She gets an invitation from Margaret Wilson. Who was Margaret Wilson? She was a daughter of the president of USA at that time. So in the same year, Alexander Graham Bell and his wife Mabel, they had set up the Montessori Education Association in Washington, D.C. Okay, so it was a win-win kind of a thing because they had set up a Montessori Education Association and they invited Dr. Montessori also there. So Montessori accepts that invitation because she got a call from the president's daughter, Margaret Wilson. So she goes there. And since many people were against the Montessori philosophy, that's a different story why they were against, what were the hardships over there. She had to keep up a advocate because her method was so good. Sometimes people did not accept her methodology also. So she had to get a strong advocate also to promote and support her method of education. So who were her advocates? Thomas Alva Edison and Helen Keller were the advocates of Dr. Montessori for her methods of education. Okay. Now, not only advocating was helping her, she had to also promote her work, promote her method promote her books into multiple places and multiple countries also. So in those days, they never had all this YouTube and all the fancy internet, right? So people had to write in the novels, people had to write in the magazines and promote. So because of that, she took help from Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is a famous novelist and he is a philosopher. So she took his help. And Ayn Rand, if you see in his novels, he was very, very appreciative about what Dr. Montessori was doing. He started writing more on Montessori method. He started writing about how to teach children using this method. And he also considered if you're using this Montessori method, children will learn very quickly because it was individualistic. It had a reason based alternative of how to work on progressive education. So all these were happening in United States of America during her visit. Now, in this part of your learning, you would learn about who invited Dr. Montessori, daughter, president's daughter, that is Margaret Wilson. At the same year, who had opened the Montessori Education Association? It was Alexander Graham Bell and his wife Mabel. They had opened up or set up the Montessori Education. Where did they set up the Montessori Education Association? In Washington, D.C. Okay. So, since many people were against the Montessori education, Maria had to keep up strong advocates. Who were her advocates? It is Thomas Alva Edison, Helen Keller. Okay. Since she had to promote her work, she had to take up the help of novelist who was a philosopher. That's Ayn Rand. Okay. So, we learnt about all of that. And when did all this happen? In 1913. Now, let's move to the other section over here. Here is what we work on when she was here in US. Apart from learning about all this, did she do anything else? Yes. Dr. Montessori was not quiet in US. She was like, anyways, I have come. Why don't I also start up a training course here? So she conducts a teacher training course in US and she addressed the annual conventions on the both National Education Association and the International Kindergarten Union in the same visit. And she promotes her work and she tells about how different is Montessori education and how useful and versatile it is in the same thing. From there, she was asked to go to Europe. Why again Europe? Again, because she had to promote her work and all of that, right? So Maria next goes to Europe. Now there at that time it was Spanish government. So Spanish government invites Dr. Montessori not for training and other thing, but they wanted her to set up something. Set up what? Set up a school? No. They wanted her to set up a research institute. When was all this? In 1917. Now, in this, she also began conducting series, not one, two, series of trainings, series of teacher trainings. She did it in the entire London. And okay, she also did it here. She did it in United Kingdom in 1919. So for 2 years, she's been in this particular place and she's conducting lots and lots of teacher training courses. But if you see in 1922, Benito Mussolini, he takes over the government of Italy. And he initially encouraged, at the beginning, he supported Dr. Montessori. He supported her to open up many schools in Italy. Okay. So when there was good amount of support, the government of Italy started to fund Montessori schools. So Dr. Montessori was also very happy because throughout in Italy, there were so many Montessori schools which was actually coming up. Not only Montessori schools, they also established a lot many training centers for teachers also. And Mussolini, that is Benito Mussolini, was helping Dr. Montessori also to do all of that. This was all happening in Italy. Now, if you notice, in 1934, Mussolini had some colonial ambitions. So, war was also taking place at that time, right? So, he had a colonial ambition. He wanted or he was planning to attack on an African state of Abyssinia. He wanted to attack that state. So, to carry out this attack, He needed more people and he wanted the entire population of Italy to participate, especially young people, especially the youth who had to be war minded. So he started working on that. So, what did he do is he set up a fascist youth organization and he invited many young people to come over there. And all those members, he gave some uniforms. And all the times they had this faces salute, and they were working with him. And Mussolini did not even stop with young youth. He said, I want, since I have helped Montessori to open up many Montessori schools. I have helped Dr. Montessori to open many training centers in Italy, and I've given so much of privilege for all the teachers to be a part over here. I want all the children also to enroll into my organization. What is that organization? It is the Fascist Youth Organization. Now, this organization, why was it set up? To attack on the African state of Abyssinia. And this was something Dr. Maria Montessori did not like. She said, I might not allow my students or any of the members of my school to participate in such a war minded activity. She did not agree on that. So, will there be any kind of consequences because of that? Let's see. What were the consequences when Dr. Montessori did not allow, or when she did not agree to join? She disagreed, right? So she did not comply with his wishes, and Mussolini, because of that, he passed an order, and he said, close all the Montessori schools in Italy. And not only closing, he says Maria should also be exiled from Italy. See what a sad situation over here. Not only closing the Montessori schools, but even Maria was exiled from Italy. From there, she goes to Spain. She lived there till 1936. Since it was a war time, civil war again broke out in Spain. So at that time, General Franco was another fascist. He takes over the government of Spain. Maria leaves Spain and then she goes to Netherlands. She stays there. In Netherlands in 1938, she opens a Montessori training center in Laren in Netherlands. And she continues to be in Netherlands for one more year until 1939. So guys, remember, after she was exiled from Italy, where does Dr. Montessori move? She goes to Spain. She lives there for almost till 1936. Again in Spain, there was a war. So she again goes back to Netherlands. In Netherlands, she will wait there for 1 year. She opens up a training center in Laren and she is there till 1939. So this is her journey when she was there in Europe. Now moving to our other parts of learning. Does Dr. Montessori, she was traveling and again it was now time to our India. So Dr. Montessori was invited to India. Okay, and in 1939, the Theosophical Society of India invites Dr. Montessori to come to India. So Dr. Montessori accepts the invitation and she comes to India with her son Mario. So she made Adhyar, that is a place in Chennai, her home, and she lives there with her son Mario. So Dr. Maria became very close and she used to contact Rukmini Devi Arundel. Now, who is this Rukmini Devi Arundel? She's a Bharatanatyam dancer. And she is the one who founded Kalakshetra. Now, what is this Kalakshetra? It is a center which focuses on music, it focuses on dance, and it focuses on fine arts. So she was a lady who founded Kalakshetra. So Dr. Montessori became very close and she was contacting Rukmini Devi Arundel, okay, when she was there in India. So who is Rukmini Devi Arundel's husband? Her husband, George Sidney Arundel, He was the president of Theosophical Society. So now you see the link here, why she became so close to Rukmini Devi. So she was invited by whom? She was invited by Theosophical Society. Theosophical Society president is who? President is George Sidney Arundel. He is the president. And his wife is Rukmini Devi Arundel. Who was she? She was a founder of an organization or an institute called Kalakshetra. So that's the reason she got a connect with Rukmini Devi, because she was invited by her husband. She comes to India with her son Mario. She stays there. Now, after that, coming to India, what happens next is the next story. Now, since it's again the war time, in 1940, when she was there in India, if you notice here, in 1940, again, India was also in the war zone. But in India, she was not affected to conduct any training courses. So she could conduct training courses. She stayed almost, see, from 1940 to 1946, she stays in India. So this is like, in the wartime and even after the war. Correct? So she was there almost till the war time. So that means for a longer period of time she was there. In 1947, she again goes to London. She sets up her Montessori center there. Again, she comes back to India, second time, the same year. Between 1939 to 1947, Maria almost conducted 16 IMTC courses. Okay, so please note down IMTC. It's a very famous training course. That is Indian Montessori training course. How many? 16 of them. And that was a foundational revolution for the Montessori movement in India. 16 courses, guys. It is not that easy. After that, she goes to Pakistan in 1949. She toured entire Europe in the same year. She tours Austria in the same year, 1951, and promotes her Montessori work. So this was all in the years. From there, we have to see what happened to her in her last days. Okay. So in her last days, if you see here in the year now 1950, in the years of 1949, 1950, 1951, so these are considered to be 3 years, 49, 50, 51. So these are 3 consecutive years. So she was nominated for a Nobel Peace Award. So Maria she could get those rewards, and she was nominated onto that reward, so she could actually do really good work on that. Because of that, she got a good amount of nominations for that. Moving to the next part to understand about her last years. If you see, this is the grave of Dr. Montessori. So in 1951, guys, in 1951, Maria goes back to Holland from India. She made Noordwijk aan Zee. Noordwijk aan Zee. So please note down the spellings. Noordwijk aan Zee. It's a coastal town. She makes that coastal town as her home, and she stays there. Her long and sacrificing efforts will come to an end suddenly on 6th May 1952, because Maria lost her life on that day. So she died almost when she was 82 years and she passed away. But till now, her life, we all remember her work. Till now, she's alive in all you Montessorians because of her successful method of study. Today, many of these schools follow Montessori method, and in the entire world, we are continuously promoting her method of study. So this is all about Dr. Maria Montessori. What an amazing lady. What an amazing, I could say, an inspirational story about her. If you notice, she had so much of struggle. And with all those struggles, she actually takes so much of the learnings from all, and we can learn about it. Okay, so you can now take a look at your other pages in your notes. Like, there are a couple of notes that we have given. You can go through again, so it gives you good amount of knowledge on how do we write, what should you write, what was Dr. Montessori's the first school, what's the first Montessori miracle, how was the stay in America, how was the stay in Europe, what happened there. So there's notes for you to read through, and you can also write down in the papers. We've also given you a model question paper. So once you go through the chapter, once you go through the notes, you will be able to answer a model question paper. Now, the model question paper here, what you have here, can be a 100-mark paper or it can be a 50-mark paper. So, depending on what we have and what kind of paper that we choose, we would be able to choose a 100 and a 50-mark paper. So, you can read through it and try to answer the questions, true or false. You can try to answer them. And if you have any sorts of doubts or anything, you can ask me on this. Okay, so this is your chapter 1. This is a simple format of your text that you actually have it. So this helps us to learn on the first chapter. That's Dr. Maria Montessori's life history. I hope this chapter helped you to revise the conceptuals, go through it and make a good study material and learn about it. Thank you very much. This is Divya here and you are watching Train Brain.